This article is extremely long and will be provided in multiple parts. I will indicate when each part is complete. The Medici. You know the name. Power, art, banking, Renaissance, Florence. But there is a hidden side to their legacy, a secret world of strange rituals, forbidden knowledge, and the desperate quest for immortality. Forget the grand palaces and priceless art for a moment. Step into the dimly lit chambers, the smoke-filled laboratories, where Europe's most brilliant minds whispered ancient secrets and chased dreams of gold, eternal youth, and ultimate power. The most powerful family in Europe, the Medici, were deeply entangled with alchemists and mystics, inviting them into their inner circle, funding their wild experiments, and relying on their cosmic insights. Some say these dealings brought them unparalleled success. Others suggest a darker price was paid. Prepare to uncover the fascinating, often unsettling stories of the top 8 alchemists and mystics who crossed paths with the mighty Medici. Their stories reveal a family obsessed not just with earthly wealth, but with unlocking the very secrets of the universe. Number 8. Giovanni Battista della Porta. In a world before modern science truly separated itself from the ancient arts, Giovanni Battista della Porta stood as a bridge between the two. Born in Naples in 1535, he was a polymath, a man of staggering curiosity whose interests spanned from cryptography to optics, from agriculture to medicine, and crucially, to what he called natural magic. This was not the waving of wands or uttering of spells from fantasy stories. Instead, natural magic in the Renaissance was an attempt to understand and manipulate the hidden forces of nature, a pursuit that often blurred the lines with alchemy and proto-scientific experimentation. While Della Porta's direct employment by the Medici may not be as clearly documented as some others on this list, his influence on the intellectual climate that the Medici so vigorously cultivated is undeniable. His most famous work, Magia Naturalis, or Natural Magic, first published in 1558 and significantly expanded in 1589, became a cornerstone text for anyone interested in the natural world's more mysterious aspects. This book was not just a collection of recipes or observations, it was a grand attempt to systematize knowledge, to explore the interconnectedness of things, and to unlock secrets that conventional wisdom overlooked. The Medici, particularly Grand Duke Francesco I, were fervent collectors of strange and wonderful things, from exotic animals to rare minerals, from ancient artifacts to innovative scientific instruments. They saw knowledge, even esoteric knowledge, as a form of power and prestige. Della Porta's Magia Naturalis would have been an essential volume in any discerning Renaissance library, including those of the Medici. It offered a tantalizing glimpse into experiments that sounded almost miraculous to the uninitiated. For instance, the book described how to create artificial gems, how to make sympathetic inks that appeared and disappeared as if by magic, and how to create illusions using mirrors and lenses. These were the kinds of wonders that captivated the minds of rulers who sought to demonstrate their mastery over both the earthly and the hidden realms. The experiments described in Magia Naturalis often touched on chemical transformations, the very essence of alchemy. Della Porta detailed methods for distilling liquids, for creating new substances, and for understanding the properties of metals and minerals. He was deeply interested in the alchemical goal of transmuting base metals into gold, not just as a financial pursuit, but as a way to understand the fundamental building blocks of creation. He viewed the world as a vast, interconnected web of sympathies and antipathies, where understanding these hidden connections allowed one to exert a form of control. This was a worldview perfectly aligned with the broader Renaissance fascination with Hermeticism and Neoplatonism, intellectual currents actively championed and funded by the Medici. Della Porta's work was also deeply practical. He invented a camera obscura, a precursor to the modern camera, and designed complex hydraulic systems. He was a master of optical illusions, creating spectacles that amazed his audiences. This blend of the theoretical and the practical, the mystical and the mechanical, made him a figure of immense appeal to the powerful patrons of the age. The Medici, always eager to showcase their advanced understanding and their patronage of genius, would have found much to admire and utilize in his writings. While Della Porta largely remained based in Naples, he was part of a wider intellectual network that spanned Italy and beyond. Scholars, philosophers, and practitioners frequently exchanged letters, ideas, and even secret formulas. The Medici court, with its vast resources and its insatiable appetite for new discoveries, served as a magnet for such figures. It is highly probable that alchemists and natural magicians operating under Medici patronage would have consulted Della Porta's works for inspiration, guidance, and experimental techniques. His explorations into the properties of plants and animals for medicinal purposes, for example, aligned with the Medici's interest in remedies and natural sciences, a field where their personal physicians and court scientists were constantly experimenting. One of the most intriguing aspects of Della Porta's work, and one that would have resonated with the Medici's understanding of power, was his exploration of physiognomy. This was the belief that a person's character and destiny could be determined by their facial features and body shape. While seemingly a separate field, it was often linked to astrology and other forms of divination, which were routinely consulted by powerful rulers like Catherine de' Medici and her Florentine relatives. Della Porta's detailed classifications of human types and their supposed animalistic counterparts would have provided another lens through which the Medici could attempt to understand and perhaps even control the world around them. It was a tool for assessing allies and enemies, for predicting behavior, and for reinforcing the hierarchy of power. The Medici were masters of political maneuvering, and any system that offered insight into human nature, no matter how speculative, was a valuable asset. The wide circulation of Magia Naturalis meant that Della Porta's ideas were not confined to his laboratory in Naples. They spread across Europe, influencing generations of scholars and practitioners. In Florence, a city vibrant with intellectual exchange under Medici rule, his theories would have been discussed in academic circles, tested in private workshops, and perhaps even implemented in the grand court spectacles and elaborate garden designs that the Medici loved to commission. His book offered a vision of a world where secrets could be unveiled, where nature's hidden powers could be harnessed for human benefit. This was a vision deeply attractive to the Medici, who sought to demonstrate their control over all aspects of their dominion, from the economy to the cosmos. They sought to legitimize their rule through a combination of divine right, military might, and intellectual superiority. Patronage of figures like Della Porta, even indirectly through the propagation of his ideas, reinforced their image as enlightened rulers at the forefront of human knowledge. The practical applications of Della Porta's natural magic extended to matters of health and longevity, a constant concern for any powerful family. His writings included recipes for various remedies, infusions, and tinctures, many of which had an alchemical foundation, using distillation and specific mineral or herbal combinations. The pursuit of elixirs of life or universal panaceas was a common thread among alchemists, and Della Porta contributed to this body of knowledge. The Medici, especially Francesco I, were deeply concerned with their health and the health of their family, and they invested heavily in physicians and apothecaries who often dabbled in these very practices. The accusations of poisoning that frequently swirled around powerful families of the Renaissance, including the Medici, further highlighted the perceived power of chemical knowledge, whether for healing or for harm. Della Porta's work, by demystifying some chemical processes while simultaneously highlighting their profound effects, provided a theoretical framework for understanding these potent substances. While Giovanni Battista della Porta may not have had a permanent residence in a Medici palace instructing a Grand Duke or Queen directly, his intellectual legacy was undeniably intertwined with their court. His Magia Naturalis served as a foundational text for the types of inquiries and experiments that fascinated the Medici and their circle. He personified the Renaissance man, tirelessly exploring the boundaries of knowledge, seeking to understand the universe through a blend of observation, experimentation, and a belief in hidden forces. The Medici, in their relentless pursuit of power, knowledge, and prestige, fostered an environment where such explorations flourished. Della Porta's work, full of intriguing secrets and practical wonders, provided a roadmap for understanding the seemingly magical aspects of the natural world, a world that the Medici sought to master. His influence is felt in the subtle shifts of thought, the adoption of new experimental techniques, and the general atmosphere of intellectual curiosity that defined the Florentine Renaissance under Medici rule. His theories and experiments became part of the broader conversation about nature, magic, and power that captivated the most influential family in Europe. Number 7. Pietro Boni. The court of Francesco I de' Medici, Grand Duke of Tuscany, was unlike any other. It was a realm where the sacred and the profane, the scientific and the superstitious intertwined in a spectacular display of power and curiosity. At the heart of this intricate tapestry was Francesco's obsession with alchemy, a pursuit that transcended a mere hobby and became a central pillar of his personal and state interests. In this environment, skilled practitioners of the alchemical arts were not just tolerated, they were sought after, funded, and sometimes even imprisoned if their secrets were deemed too valuable or their failures too costly. One such individual, whose name is often whispered in the darker corners of Medici history, was Pietro Boni. Boni was an alchemist who actively worked in Grand Duke Francesco's laboratories, serving the Medici's deep and expensive quest for the Philosopher's Stone. While not as famous as some other figures on this list, his direct involvement provides a rare, tangible link to the actual day-to-day alchemical experiments conducted under the Medici's roof. Francesco I was not content to merely patronize alchemists from afar. He was a hands-on practitioner, building elaborate laboratories in the Palazzo Pitti, his primary residence, and at the Casino di San Marco, a separate building dedicated to his scientific and artistic pursuits. These were not dusty, hidden rooms, but grand, purpose-built facilities, testament to the immense resources he poured into his alchemical dreams. He collected furnaces, stills, retorts, and rare ingredients from across the known world. His goal was not just wealth through gold transmutation, though that was certainly a tempting prospect. Francesco, like many Renaissance alchemists, believed that the alchemical process held the key to universal knowledge, to understanding the fundamental nature of matter, and potentially to discovering the elixir of life, a substance capable of granting immortality or at least greatly extended life and perfect health. Pietro Boni was one of the men who helped him chase these elusive goals. Boni's role would have been multifaceted. He would have assisted Francesco in his experiments, prepared the necessary ingredients, maintained the complex apparatus, and perhaps even offered theoretical guidance based on his own studies of alchemical texts. Alchemical work was laborious, often dangerous, and required immense patience. Recipes were often cryptic, filled with symbolic language, requiring a true initiate to interpret them. Boni, as a practitioner, would have possessed the practical knowledge to navigate these challenges. Historical accounts suggest that Francesco had several alchemists working for him, sometimes simultaneously, sometimes in sequence, as he sought to maximize his chances of success. The competition among these practitioners would have been fierce, each striving to impress the Grand Duke with their progress. Boni's presence indicates a level of trust placed in his abilities, suggesting he was a respected, if not always successful, expert in his field. The life of a court alchemist, even in a wealthy court like the Medici's, was not without its perils. Success was rare, and failures could be costly in terms of time, resources, and even the alchemist's freedom. There are historical examples of alchemists who promised too much, only to be imprisoned when they failed to deliver. The Grand Duke, despite his personal passion, was also a pragmatic ruler. He expected results, or at least convincing demonstrations of progress. The very nature of alchemical secrecy meant that much of Boni's work remained shrouded in mystery, lost to the annals of history, or only hinted at in obscure court records. We know he was there, in the Grand Ducal laboratories, tending to the fiery furnaces and bubbling retorts, attempting to unlock nature's deepest secrets for the most powerful family in Florence. The pursuit of the Philosopher's Stone, the legendary substance capable of transmuting base metals into gold, was at the forefront of Francesco's alchemical agenda. Imagine the economic impact of such a discovery for a state like Tuscany. It would have reshaped the very foundations of European power, and Boni's work would have involved endless attempts at calcination, distillation, sublimation, and coagulation of various minerals, salts, and metals, following complex procedures outlined in ancient alchemical texts like the works of Geber or Hermes Trismegistus, texts that the Medici themselves helped translate and popularize through their patronage of scholars like Marsilio Ficino. Beyond gold, the quest for the universal panacea, the elixir of life, was equally compelling. For a ruler, the promise of extended life, robust health, and the ability to heal any ailment was an alluring prospect. It offered a form of ultimate control over one's own mortality and that of one's lineage, ensuring the continuation of the Medici dynasty. Boni, in his role, would have been involved in the preparation of medicinal tinctures, sophisticated chemical compounds, and other alchemical remedies, many of which had genuine, if sometimes dangerous, pharmacological effects. Renaissance medicine was often intertwined with alchemical principles, believing that perfect health was a balance of elemental forces, which could be restored through chemically prepared substances. The secretive nature of alchemy also lent itself to the political intrigues of the Medici court. Knowledge of poisons and antidotes derived from alchemical studies was a dangerous asset. While there is no direct evidence linking Pietro Boni to nefarious activities, the very fact that he was involved in sophisticated chemical processes meant he possessed knowledge that could be wielded for either healing or destruction. This era was rife with accusations of poisoning, particularly among powerful families, and the alchemists, with their intimate knowledge of chemical compounds, often found themselves under suspicion, whether justly or not. The very presence of an alchemist like Boni in the Grand Duke's inner circle underscored the dual nature of these arts, the pursuit of enlightenment and the potential for malevolence. Francesco I's personal fascination with alchemy also had a profound influence on his approach to art and science. He commissioned objects that blended artistic beauty with alchemical symbolism, creating cabinets of curiosities that showcased his mastery over both nature and artifice. Pietro Boni's work contributed to this broader cultural environment. The success or failure of Boni's experiments would have directly impacted Francesco's continued belief in and investment in alchemy. We know that Francesco never publicly announced the discovery of the Philosopher's Stone or the elixir of life, suggesting that Boni and the other alchemists of the court ultimately did not achieve these ultimate goals. However, the sheer dedication of resources and time to their work by the Grand Duke speaks volumes about the perceived potential of their art. The historical records about Pietro Boni are scarce, typical for many working alchemists whose activities were kept secret. His legacy is largely intertwined with that of his patron Francesco I de' Medici. He represents the practical, hands-on aspect of Medici alchemy, the unsung laboratory assistant or lead alchemist to a powerful, obsessed ruler. His presence in the Medici's most private spaces, working on their most ambitious and secret projects, makes him a crucial figure in understanding the true depth of the family's engagement with the mystical arts. He was a man of the retort in the furnace, diligently pursuing the impossible under the watchful, eager eye of a Grand Duke, who believed, perhaps more than anyone else in Europe, that the secrets of the universe lay hidden within the transformative powers of alchemy. His story reminds us that the Medici's world was not just one of beauty and political intrigue, but also of smoke, fire, and the fervent hope for a magical breakthrough. Number 6, Cosimo, the first de' Medici. When you think of the Medici, perhaps your mind conjures images of Lorenzo the Magnificent, the poet prince, or the lavish art collection of Cosimo the Elder. But Grand Duke Cosimo, the first de' Medici, who ruled Florence and later Tuscany from 1537 to 1574, played a crucial, often overlooked role in cementing the family's deep ties to the world of alchemists and mystics. Unlike his son Francesco I, who was a hands-on alchemist, Cosimo I was primarily a patron and strategist. Yet, his patronage was so broad, so encompassing and so strategic that he created an environment where esoteric knowledge, including alchemy and various forms of magic, flourished and was even seen as a legitimate tool for statecraft and power. He understood that knowledge in all its forms was power, and he sought to accumulate it for the benefit of his burgeoning Grand Duchy. Cosimo I inherited a Florentine republic in chaos, and through cunning, ruthlessness, and an astute understanding of propaganda, transformed it into a stable, centralized Grand Duchy. To achieve this, he needed to legitimize his rule not just through military strength and economic prowess, but through intellectual and cultural superiority. He founded academies, fostered universities, and gathered around him a court of scholars, artists, and natural philosophers. Within this vibrant intellectual sphere, the study of ancient wisdom, including Hermeticism, Neoplatonism, and Kabbalah, was not seen as mere superstition, but as profound philosophical inquiry. These were the very currents of thought that provided the philosophical underpinning for what was then considered high magic and alchemy. Cosimo understood that these mystical traditions, while often shrouded in secrecy, offered a different path to understanding the universe's fundamental laws and could be a source of both material and political advantage. Cosimo's most significant contribution to the Medici's mystical legacy was his continued and enhanced patronage of the Platonic Academy and its leading light, Marsilio Ficino, and later Ficino's student, Giovanni Pico della Mirandola. While these figures had begun their work under earlier Medici, Cosimo ensured their enduring influence. Ficino's translation of the Corpus Hermeticum, a collection of ancient Egyptian Greek texts dealing with divine wisdom, magic, astrology, and alchemy, was revolutionary. It convinced many Renaissance thinkers, including Cosimo, that humanity had access to a hidden ancient wisdom that could unlock the secrets of the universe. Cosimo understood the political implications of sponsoring such a monumental project. It positioned Florence, and by extension, his rule as the new Athens, the center of resurrected ancient knowledge. This wasn't just about philosophy, it was about positioning the Medici as the rightful heirs to classical wisdom, possessing unique insight into the cosmos. Cosimo's patronage extended to natural sciences and collecting. He established the Uffizi Gallery, not just as an art gallery, but as a vast repository of curiosities, scientific instruments, and artifacts that blurred the lines between art, science, and the esoteric. His famous studiolo in the Palazzo Vecchio, a private study filled with strange and wondrous objects, reflected his fascination with the natural world's hidden powers. While not a laboratory in the sense of Francesco's, it was a space for contemplation and the appreciation of nature's marvels, many of which had alchemical or magical associations. He commissioned botanical gardens, collected exotic animals, and supported natural historians who sought to categorize and understand the world's living forms. These were all part of a broader intellectual project that often overlapped with alchemical principles, the belief that by observing, collecting, and manipulating nature, one could uncover its deepest secrets. The Medici's reliance on astrology was also a significant aspect of Cosimo's court. While he may not have been as overtly superstitious as his daughter Catherine, Cosimo regularly consulted astrologers for advice on political matters, military campaigns, and even the auspicious timing of important family events. Astrology was not seen as mere fortune-telling, but as a complex mathematical and philosophical system that revealed the divine order of the cosmos and its influence on human affairs. Knowing the stars' alignments was believed to grant a strategic advantage, allowing a ruler to act in harmony with cosmic forces. Cosimo, a shrewd and pragmatic ruler, would not have overlooked any tool that could potentially aid his reign, whether it was military intelligence or celestial prophecy. He embraced the intellectual framework that allowed for such interpretations, which was strongly supported by the Hermetic and Neoplatonic traditions he championed. Perhaps one of the most compelling, though less direct, links between Cosimo I and the mystical arts was his keen interest in alchemy's practical applications beyond mere gold making. Alchemical processes were essential for creating new pigments for artists, manufacturing high-quality glass, developing new medicines, and perfecting the art of distillation, which was crucial for perfumes, spirits, and medicinal tinctures. Cosimo funded workshops and artisans who engaged in these very practices, often with alchemical principles guiding their work. He understood that these innovations could bring both economic prosperity and prestige to his duchy. By supporting figures like Pietro Boni and later his own son Francesco, Cosimo established the infrastructure and intellectual climate for alchemy to thrive as both a philosophical pursuit and a practical industry within his domain. He saw the potential for alchemical discovery to enhance the Medici's power and wealth, not just through literal gold, but through the development of advanced materials and technologies. Cosimo's long reign created the stability and wealth necessary for such extensive patronage. He was not a starry-eyed dreamer, but a hard-nosed ruler who saw the value in all forms of knowledge. His support for ancient texts and their translations, his establishment of intellectual academies, and his general promotion of arts and sciences created an environment where the mystical traditions of alchemy, hermeticism, and astrology were not just tolerated, but actively integrated into the fabric of court life. He understood that controlling the intellectual landscape, including its esoteric dimensions, was a powerful way to assert dominance and shape public perception. By linking his rule to ancient wisdom and cosmic order, he imbued his authority with a sense of divine right and intellectual superiority. In essence, Cosimo I was the Grand Patron who laid the groundwork for the Medici's deeper dive into alchemical and mystical practices. He fostered the intellectual curiosity, provided the financial resources, and created the cultural environment that made it possible for later Medici, particularly his son Francesco, to fully embrace these arts. His legacy is not just one of political consolidation and artistic flourishing, but also of opening the gates to a world where philosophy, science, and magic were inextricably linked, all serving the grand ambition of the Medici family. He believed in the power of knowledge, whether it came from a sacred text, a telescope, or a bubbling alchemical retort to enhance his rule and glorify his dynasty. Number 5, Catherine de' Medici. Born into the powerful Medici dynasty in Florence in 1519, Catherine de' Medici would become Queen of France, a figure of immense power and intrigue. While her life was dominated by political maneuvering, religious wars, and dynastic struggles, her Florentine upbringing imbued her with a deep, lifelong fascination with the mystical arts, particularly astrology and prophecy. Unlike her male Medici relatives who delved into the alchemical lab, Catherine's engagement with the esoteric was more focused on divination and understanding the hidden cosmic forces that she believed influenced human destiny. She relied on astrologers and seers for guidance and reassurance, especially during the tumultuous years of her regency and the French Wars of Religion. This practice, while common among European royalty, was particularly pronounced in Catherine and reflected her Medici roots, a family deeply connected to the Neoplatonic and Hermetic revival. Catherine's childhood in Florence would have exposed her to the intellectual ferment of the Medici court, where figures like Marsilio Ficino's ideas about celestial influence and the interconnectedness of the cosmos were still widely discussed. She grew up in an environment where ancient wisdom, including astrology, was considered a legitimate form of knowledge, capable of providing insight into the future and guiding earthly actions. When she moved to France as a young bride to marry the future King Henry II, she brought with her not just Italian fashions and culinary tastes, but also a distinctly Italian approach to power, which included consulting celestial experts. The French court, though sophisticated, did not initially share the same depth of engagement with these esoteric practices as the Medici. Catherine changed that. Her personal astrologer Ruggieri was a constant presence in her court, and her reliance on him was legendary. Ruggieri, another Italian, had studied in Florence and brought with him the same intellectual currents that had shaped Catherine. He cast horoscopes for her children, and for significant events. Catherine believed that understanding the alignment of the stars could reveal the most propitious moments for political decisions, for battles, and for dynastic marriages. In a time of extreme uncertainty, with Protestant and Catholic factions tearing France apart, Catherine sought every possible advantage, and she believed the heavens held some of the answers. Her reliance on Ruggieri was a source of both comfort and controversy, as many viewed such practices with suspicion, especially after the Protestant Reformation began to challenge established beliefs. The most famous figure linked to Catherine's mystical pursuits was Michel de Nostradame, known to history as Nostradamus. While Nostradamus was not a full-time court astrologer like Ruggieri, Catherine was deeply intrigued by his published prophecies, the Centuries. She summoned him to her court in 1555 after the first edition of his book gained widespread attention. The meeting between the powerful queen and the enigmatic seer is the stuff of legend. She reportedly consulted him about the future of her children, particularly the young Dauphin, and the destiny of the Valois dynasty. Nostradamus, with his cryptic verses and unsettling predictions, captivated her. While the exact details of their conversations remain speculative, it is clear that Catherine placed significant stock in his insights, or at least in his ability to offer a perspective beyond the earthly machinations of her court. His prophecies, often interpreted after the fact, were a source of both fascination and dread for Catherine, who faced constant threats to her family and her reign. Catherine's patronage of astrology extended beyond personal consultations. She commissioned elaborate horoscopes, and her court became a hub for astrological debate. She saw astrology as a tool for governance, a means of gaining an edge in a complex and dangerous political landscape. Her belief in cosmic influence was so strong that she would sometimes delay or accelerate major decisions based on astrological readings. This was not viewed by her as mere superstition, but as a sophisticated method of understanding the underlying rhythms of the universe, a system of knowledge that had been revered by ancient civilizations. For Catherine, the stars were not distant points of light, but active participants in human affairs, and a wise ruler would learn to read their script. Beyond astrology, Catherine's interest in the occult bordered on what some contemporaries considered black magic. Rumors swirled around her, accusing her of using magical charms and seeking forbidden knowledge. While many of these accusations were likely politically motivated slander from her enemies, especially during the religious wars, they highlight the atmosphere of suspicion that surrounded anyone dabbling in the esoteric arts. The Medici, after all, had been involved in magical practices for generations, and their reputation, though admired, was not entirely free from whispers of darker secrets. Catherine, perhaps more than any other Medici, embodied the Renaissance blend of piety and pragmatism, of belief in divine providence, and a willingness to explore all avenues of knowledge, including those considered on the fringes. Her commissioning of intricate astrological charts, often beautifully illuminated and symbolic, speaks to her deep engagement. These were not just quick readings, they were elaborate works of art and science, requiring considerable skill and time. They visually represented the cosmic forces at play, offering a symbolic roadmap for her life and the destiny of France. For Catherine, understanding these celestial influences was not just a personal quirk, it was an integral part of her strategy for survival and power. She saw herself as navigating a world where human will interacted with divine and cosmic forces, and the mystic arts offered a means to decipher this complex interplay. Catherine de' Medici's life was a testament to the enduring influence of her Florentine heritage. She brought the Medici's intellectual curiosity and their openness to esoteric knowledge from Italy to the French court, embedding it within the highest echelons of European power. Her reliance on astrologers and prophets, particularly Nostradamus, is one of the most vivid examples of a powerful ruler turning to mystical insights for guidance in an age of upheaval. She stands as a potent reminder that for the Medici, power was not just about money and armies, but also about understanding the hidden forces of the universe, whether through alchemical transformation or celestial divination. Her story illustrates how deeply these mystical traditions were woven into the lives of Europe's most influential figures. Number 4, Bianca Capello. In the opulent yet dangerous court of Florence, in the late 16th century, Bianca Capello's life played out like a dramatic opera, filled with passion, intrigue, and ultimately accusations of dark deeds. Born into a Venetian noble family, she famously eloped with a Florentine banker and later became the mistress, and then the wife, of Grand Duke Francesco I de' Medici. Her story is sensational enough on its own, but it gains an even more captivating layer when considering her deep involvement in Francesco's obsessive alchemical pursuits. Bianca was not merely a passive observer of her husband's laboratory experiments. She was an active participant, a fellow explorer of the hermetic arts, and a figure around whom many rumors of poisons and secret potions swirled. Her connection to alchemy is therefore not just one of patronage, but of hands-on, daily engagement. Francesco I de' Medici, as we know, was utterly consumed by alchemy. He believed it held the key to transforming lead into gold, discovering the universal panacea, and unlocking the very secrets of creation. His laboratories in the Palazzo Pitti and at the Casino di San Marco were the most advanced of their kind, filled with exotic ingredients and sophisticated apparatus. Bianca Capello, with her quick intellect and adventurous spirit, shared this fascination. She was not content to remain in the conventional role of a Grand Duchess. Instead, she immersed herself in Francesco's alchemical world, learning the processes, understanding the language, and perhaps even conducting experiments herself. This shared passion undoubtedly strengthened their bond, making them partners not just in love and power, but in the arcane quest for ultimate knowledge. Bianca's involvement is often mentioned in conjunction with the accusations of poisoning that plagued her. The sudden and simultaneous deaths of Francesco and Bianca in 1587, initially attributed to malaria, fueled centuries of speculation. Many suspected foul play, with the finger often pointed at Francesco's brother, Cardinal Ferdinando de' Medici, who stood to inherit the Grand Duchy. The alchemical knowledge possessed by both Francesco and Bianca made these accusations even more chilling. They were known to handle potent chemicals, distill dangerous essences, and understand the subtle effects of various compounds. This familiarity with substances that could both heal and kill made them both powerful and vulnerable to suspicion. Bianca, in particular, was often portrayed by her enemies as a scheming, manipulative woman who used poisons to eliminate rivals or secure her position. While concrete evidence for these accusations remains elusive, the fact that they were plausible stemmed from her known involvement in alchemical and chemical studies. The historical accounts suggest that Bianca was deeply interested in the alchemical process of distillation, particularly for medicinal purposes and for creating cosmetics. Renaissance women, especially those at court, often sought to improve their appearance and health through elaborate preparations. Alchemical distillation was crucial for creating potent perfumes, essential oils, and sophisticated skin preparations. Bianca would have had access to the finest ingredients and the most skilled alchemists like Pietro Boni through Francesco's patronage. Her interest in these practical applications of alchemy would have further deepened her immersion in the wider alchemical world, where the boundaries between medicine, beauty, and fundamental transmutation were often blurred. She understood the power of substances, both for external application and for internal consumption. Bianca's presence in the alchemical laboratories was not just a passing interest. She was a woman of considerable intelligence and ambition, and she likely saw the alchemical pursuit as another avenue for influence and power within the Medici court. If Francesco could truly unlock the secrets of gold or the elixir of life, Bianca, as his closest confidante and partner in these endeavors, would undoubtedly share in the glory and the immense benefits. Her shared fascination with the unknown, her willingness to delve into realms considered dangerous or forbidden by others set her apart. This made her both an intriguing figure and a target for those who sought to discredit her. The environment of the Medici court under Francesco and Bianca was one of intense intellectual curiosity and artistic patronage, but also of secrecy and suspicion. Alchemical experiments, by their very nature, were conducted behind closed doors, the results often kept hidden. This secrecy, while necessary for protecting valuable discoveries, also fostered an atmosphere ripe for rumor and intrigue. Bianca, as the Grand Duchess, would have been at the center of this world, privy to its secrets and exposed to its dangers. Her close proximity to the Grand Duke's alchemical work meant she was intimately familiar with the potent and often volatile substances they handled. The story of Bianca Capello and her involvement in alchemy highlights a crucial aspect of the Medici's engagement with these mystical arts. It was not just a male pursuit. While most prominent alchemists were men, women in powerful positions like Bianca could also become deeply enmeshed in these activities, whether through direct participation, patronage, or the commissioning of alchemically produced goods. For Bianca, alchemy was part of her shared life with Francesco, a bond forged in the crucible of intellectual passion and shared ambition. The whispers about her use of poisons, however exaggerated, further cemented her image as a powerful woman who commanded secret knowledge, making her a truly fascinating, and often feared, figure in the Medici narrative. Her legacy is inextricably linked to the dark allure of the alchemical arts, where the quest for knowledge and power could sometimes lead to a tragic end. Number 3. Francesco I of Medici. When the history books speak of the Medici, they often highlight their patronage of art, architecture, and banking. But Grand Duke Francesco I de' Medici, who ruled from 1574 to 1587, represents a radical departure, a man who transformed the ducal palace into a vast laboratory and whose personal obsession with alchemy reached unprecedented levels. He was not just a patron of alchemists, he was a serious, hands-on practitioner dedicating immense wealth, time, and intellectual energy to unlocking the universe's most guarded secrets. His fascination with alchemy defined his reign and profoundly shaped the character of the late 16th century Florentine court. For Francesco, alchemy was not a fringe activity, it was a central pillar of his scientific and philosophical inquiry, a quest that blended the mystical with the material in a relentless pursuit of power, knowledge, and perhaps immortality. Francesco inherited his father, Cosimo I's strategic mind and his family's love for collecting curiosities. However, he amplified this curiosity into an obsessive passion for the secrets of nature, particularly through chemical transformation. He established lavish, purpose-built laboratories, most notably at the Casino di San Marco in Florence and within the Palazzo Pitti itself. These were not primitive sheds, but sophisticated spaces equipped with multiple furnaces, stills, retorts, and vast collections of minerals, metals, plants, and exotic animal products. He employed numerous assistants, including figures like Pietro Boni, dedicating vast state resources to his alchemical endeavors. He was often described as being covered in soot, tending his fires, and overseeing complex distillations, a stark contrast to the regal image one might expect of a European monarch. His primary alchemical goals were classically defined: the transmutation of base metals into gold and the discovery of the Philosopher's Stone, a legendary substance that could perform this transmutation and also serve as a universal panacea or elixir of life. For a ruler, the ability to create unlimited gold would have been an economic game changer, granting unparalleled power and independence. The elixir of life, on the other hand, promised personal longevity, an extension of his reign, and ultimately a defiance of human mortality. These were not just fanciful dreams for Francesco, they were deeply serious scientific and philosophical quests rooted in the Hermetic tradition that his ancestors had so vigorously supported. He believed that through intense study and rigorous experimentation, these secrets could indeed be unveiled. Francesco's passion for alchemy spilled over into his patronage of the arts and his personal collecting habits. His famous Studiolo of Francesco I in the Palazzo Vecchio is a direct manifestation of his alchemical worldview. This small, secret room is adorned with allegorical paintings that depict scenes of alchemical transformation, the four elements, and the various stages of the magnum opus, the great work of alchemy. The room was designed not just as a cabinet of curiosities, but as a symbolic microcosm of the universe, reflecting Francesco's desire to master all aspects of nature. It housed his most prized possessions, rare minerals, precious stones, unique instruments, and scientific specimens, many of which were related to his alchemical pursuits. He also collected rare alchemical manuscripts, seeking ancient wisdom that might guide his experiments. Beyond the pursuit of gold and immortality, Francesco's alchemical explorations led to practical, if unintended, innovations. His laboratories were centers for experimentation in glassmaking, ceramics, and the production of new pigments and dyes. He was particularly interested in producing porcelain, a highly prized and expensive material imported from China. His alchemical experiments undoubtedly contributed to the development of early European porcelain, demonstrating how the pursuit of esoteric goals could inadvertently lead to tangible industrial advances. He also commissioned skilled artisans to create stunning objects that blended alchemical symbolism with exquisite craftsmanship, showcasing his mastery over both natural materials and the transformative power of human artistry. The secrecy surrounding Francesco's alchemical activities was intense. This was partly due to the nature of alchemy itself, which often involved secret formulas and clandestine operations, but also due to the political implications of such a pursuit. If he were to succeed in creating gold, the economic implications would be vast and potentially destabilizing. Moreover, the line between alchemy and the darker arts, like poisoning, was often blurred in the public imagination. Indeed, Francesco's sudden death in 1587, alongside his wife Bianca Capello, led to centuries of speculation about poisoning, with some theories suggesting that their shared alchemical knowledge might have been involved, either as a means of foul play or as an accidental consequence of their dangerous experiments. Modern scientific analysis has offered some clarity, but the enduring mystery highlights the dangerous allure of their alchemical world. Francesco's reign was characterized by this deep personal engagement with the esoteric. He was not just a distant patron, he was an active participant in a quest that he believed held the key to ultimate truth and power. His dedication of state resources, his personal time, and his intellectual focus on alchemy fundamentally altered the perception of these arts within the Medici court. He elevated alchemy from a clandestine pursuit to a sanctioned, albeit secret, state-sponsored endeavor. He saw no conflict between his role as Grand Duke and his role as a Grand Alchemist. For him, they were two sides of the same coin, both aimed at understanding and mastering the world. His legacy is one of a ruler who genuinely believed in the transformative power of alchemy, dedicating his life to cracking its ancient code, forever linking the Medici name to the smoky laboratories and the fiery pursuit of the Philosopher's Stone. Number 2, Giovanni Pico della Mirandola. Giovanni Pico della Mirandola, born in 1463 into a powerful Italian noble family, burst onto the intellectual scene of Renaissance Florence like a supernova. A brilliant polymath, he mastered Latin, Greek, Hebrew, and Arabic at a young age, devouring knowledge from every corner of the known world. His life, though tragically short, was profoundly intertwined with the Medici, particularly with Lorenzo the Magnificent and the intellectual circle around Marsilio Ficino. While Pico della Mirandola is primarily celebrated as a philosopher and humanist, his intellectual journey led him deep into the mystical traditions of Kabbalah and what was then understood as natural magic, making him a central figure in the Medici's engagement with esoteric knowledge. He sought to synthesize all wisdom traditions, believing they pointed to a single, universal truth, a quest that captivated the Medici. Pico's famous Oration on the Dignity of Man, delivered in 1486 as an introduction to his proposed 900 Theses, is a foundational text of Renaissance humanism. In this oration, he argued for humanity's unique position at the center of the cosmos, capable of ascending to the divine or descending to the animal, depending on individual choice and effort. This concept of human free will and potential for self-perfection deeply resonated with the Neoplatonic philosophy championed by the Medici through Marsilio Ficino. Pico's belief that man could become whatever he willed through study and spiritual discipline echoed the Medici's own ambition and self-fashioning. He presented a vision of humanity as a microcosm containing within itself the vastness of the universe, a distinctly mystical idea. But it was Pico's controversial exploration of Kabbalah that cemented his place among the mystics linked to the Medici. The Kabbalah, a system of Jewish mysticism, offered a complex framework for understanding the divine nature and the creation of the universe through numerical and linguistic correspondences within sacred texts. Pico was one of the first Christian scholars to seriously study Kabbalah, believing it contained hidden truths that validated Christian doctrine and provided a key to unlocking ancient wisdom. He argued that the Kabbalah offered a form of practical magic, not the dark magic of summoning demons, but a natural magic that used divine names and symbols to influence the world in harmony with God's will. This aligned with the Medici's interest in Hermetic magic, as both traditions shared a belief in the interconnectedness of all things and the power of symbolic knowledge. Pico's intellectual ambition led him to propose his 900 Theses for public debate in Rome in 1487, a monumental undertaking that included propositions drawn from various philosophical schools from scholasticism to Platonism, and controversially from Kabbalah and magic. This audacious challenge ultimately led to him being accused of heresy by the church, forcing him to flee. It was Lorenzo the Magnificent who intervened on his behalf, offering him refuge in Florence and using his considerable influence with the Pope to secure his eventual exoneration. This act of protection underscores the deep connection between Pico and the Medici. They valued his intellect and his pursuit of knowledge, even when it led him into conflict with powerful institutions. Lorenzo saw in Pico a reflection of the Florentine spirit of intellectual daring and innovation. Pico's work on Kabbalah also touched upon alchemical ideas. While not an alchemist in the practical, laboratory-based sense like Francesco I, his philosophical framework provided a crucial intellectual basis for the alchemical quest. The Kabbalistic concept of transmutation, of transforming lower forms into higher ones, mirrored the alchemical process of refining base metals into gold or purifying the soul through spiritual work. Pico believed that the universe was structured on symbolic correspondences, where every element, planet, and letter held a hidden meaning and power. This worldview was entirely compatible with the alchemical notion that metals had souls, that they could be perfected, and that their transformations were reflections of cosmic and spiritual processes. For Pico, understanding these divine correspondences was the true magic, the key to unlocking both material and spiritual secrets. His philosophical approach to magic emphasized the power of the human intellect and will to act as a conduit for divine forces. He believed that true magic was not about coercing spirits, but about understanding the natural harmonies of the universe and aligning oneself with them. This white magic, or divine magic, was seen as a legitimate pursuit by many Renaissance thinkers, distinct from illicit necromancy. The Medici, keen to present themselves as enlightened rulers fostering legitimate knowledge, would have appreciated Pico's philosophical distinction, even as they also engaged with more practical applications of magic and alchemy. Pico della Mirandola represented the pinnacle of the Renaissance intellectual's quest for universal knowledge. His belief in the unity of all wisdom traditions, from ancient philosophy to mystical Kabbalah, provided a grand synthesis that captivated the Medici court. He influenced not only scholars, but also artists and rulers, shaping the intellectual climate where the pursuit of esoteric knowledge was not just tolerated, but celebrated. His willingness to challenge conventional thought, even at personal risk, reflected the daring spirit that the Medici themselves embodied in their rise to power. His story is a testament to the Medici's role as patrons of intellectual freedom, even when it bordered on the controversial, recognizing in figures like Pico the potential for profound insights into the nature of reality itself. Through him, the Medici further cemented their reputation as the foremost patrons of humanism, philosophy, and the intricate, often veiled world of Renaissance mysticism. Number 1, Marsilio Ficino. In the heart of Renaissance Florence, under the golden patronage of the Medici, a philosopher named Marsilio Ficino embarked on a monumental project that would forever intertwine the family with the deepest currents of Western mysticism, magic, and alchemy. Born in 1433, Ficino was not just a scholar, he was the head of the Platonic Academy, a brilliant translator, and a profound thinker, who synthesized ancient philosophy with Christian theology in revolutionary ways. His work, directly funded and championed by Cosimo de' Medici and later Lorenzo the Magnificent, was the intellectual wellspring from which much of the Medici's engagement with esoteric knowledge flowed. Ficino provided the philosophical framework that made the pursuit of alchemy, astrology, and magic not just acceptable, but intellectually respectable and even spiritually uplifting for the ruling elite. Cosimo de' Medici, recognizing Ficino's extraordinary talent, essentially adopted him as a young man, funding his education and providing him with a villa near Florence where he could pursue his studies. Cosimo's most significant commission to Ficino was the translation of the complete works of Plato from Greek into Latin. This was a monumental undertaking, as Plato's original texts had been largely lost to the West for centuries. But even more crucially for our story, Cosimo also instructed Ficino to translate the Corpus Hermeticum, a collection of ancient Egyptian Greek texts believed to contain the divine wisdom of Hermes Trismegistus, a mythical figure said to be a contemporary of Moses and the founder of alchemy and magic. Cosimo famously urged Ficino to prioritize the Hermetic texts over Plato, a clear indication of the Medici's profound interest in this ancient, supposedly divinely revealed esoteric knowledge. The Corpus Hermeticum, once translated by Ficino, electrified the intellectual world of the Renaissance. It presented a vision of the universe as a living, interconnected organism permeated by divine forces and governed by celestial influences. It spoke of man as a microcosm, capable of understanding and even influencing the macrocosm. This Hermetic philosophy provided a powerful intellectual justification for what was then known as natural magic or Hermetic magic. This was not about summoning demons, but about understanding the hidden sympathies and antipathies between celestial bodies, minerals, plants, and human beings, and then using this knowledge to exert beneficial influence. This was the intellectual bedrock for the Medici's later deep dive into alchemy and astrology. Ficino himself dabbled in astrology, casting horoscopes and writing about the influence of the planets on human temperament and health. He believed that understanding these celestial influences allowed for a form of cosmic attunement, where one could align oneself with favorable planetary energies. This directly impacted the Medici's own reliance on astrologers for political and personal guidance. Ficino's most overtly magical work was 3 books on life, published in 1489. In this treatise, he explored the relationship between planetary influences, human health, and the use of talismans, images, and music to draw down celestial beneficial energies. He discussed how to choose auspicious times for actions based on planetary alignments, how to create astral images, talismans to attract specific celestial virtues, and how music and colors could influence the soul and body. While framed within a Neoplatonic Christian context, these practices were undeniably forms of Renaissance magic. Ficino, through this work, legitimized and popularized these practices within the Medici circle and beyond, making them part of sophisticated intellectual discourse rather than mere folk superstition. For Ficino, alchemy was not just about making gold. It was a spiritual and philosophical quest for perfection, a purification of matter that mirrored the purification of the soul. While he himself was primarily a philosopher and translator rather than a hands-on alchemist, his philosophical framework provided the intellectual context for later Medici alchemists like Francesco I. The Hermetic principle of as above, so below, which permeated Ficino's translations, directly informed the alchemical belief that the processes occurring in the retort mirrored the processes occurring in the cosmos and within the human soul. The transmutation of lead into gold became a metaphor for spiritual enlightenment and the attainment of higher consciousness. Ficino's enduring presence at the Medici court, his direct relationship with Cosimo and Lorenzo, and his role as the intellectual leader of the Platonic Academy meant that his ideas permeated every aspect of Medici life. He was their spiritual advisor, their philosophical guide, and the primary architect of their engagement with esoteric wisdom. His emphasis on human dignity, the power of the soul, and the interconnectedness of the cosmos provided a powerful intellectual justification for the Medici's ambition and their belief in their own unique destiny. He taught them that knowledge of the hidden forces of the universe was not only desirable but essential for a truly enlightened ruler. The Medici's financial and political support allowed Ficino to dedicate his life to these translations and philosophical explorations, creating a unique intellectual environment in Florence. Without Ficino's groundbreaking work, the later Medici generations, such as Francesco I, would not have had the intellectual foundation or the cultural permission to pursue alchemy and magic with such fervor and public display. And Ficino essentially opened the door to the mystical dimension for the Medici, showing them how ancient wisdom could be reconciled with Christian belief and how it could serve as a source of both personal enlightenment and political power. His legacy is one of a scholar who bridged worlds, bringing ancient esoteric traditions into the heart of the Renaissance, forever linking the Medici to the grand, mysterious quest for universal knowledge. His life and work are the very definition of the Medici's fascination with the hidden forces that shaped their world.